Stop being so kind if you want to save your life. Seriously, everything you thought you knew about kindness is dead wrong, and today we're going to expose the dark secret behind it. This is why your kindness is destroying you and how you can turn things around before it's too late. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel where we break down life's toughest questions using the wisdom of ancient philosophy with a modern twist. Today we're diving deep into something that might just flip your entire world upside down: kindness. Yup, you heard me right. It's time to rethink everything you knew about being nice because it could be ruining your life without you even knowing it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. How could being kind possibly be bad for me? I mean, we've been told since we were kids that kindness is a virtue, that being nice to others is one of the best things you can do. And yes, kindness is a beautiful thing. But what happens when it's taken too far? What happens when your kindness is taken advantage of, when it becomes a crutch, or worse, a form of self-sabotage? Let's start by painting a picture. We all know that one person, right? The one who's always there to lend a hand, never says no, and goes out of their way to make everyone happy. They're the glue that holds everything together. Maybe that's you. You're always the one who steps up when someone's in need, the person who others rely on. But have you ever stopped to wonder why? Why are some people, maybe even you, so obsessed with being kind? What's really driving that need to always put others first? You might think it's because you're a good person, and sure, that's part of it. But there's something deeper at play here. Often the need to be kind, to be too kind, comes from a place of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, fear of being seen as selfish. And this fear drives you to put others' needs ahead of your own, to the point where you lose sight of who you are and what you want. The twist: kindness as a double-edged sword. Here's the kicker: kindness isn't always good. Shocking, I know. It sounds counterintuitive because we've been taught our whole lives that kindness is the ultimate virtue. But when kindness goes unchecked, it transforms into something toxic, something that slowly chips away at who you are until there's nothing left. Imagine this: you're constantly helping others, saying yes to every request, being the go-to person for everyone's problems. It feels good at first, right? You're doing something noble, but over time, something shifts. You start to feel drained, invisible even. You're so busy making others happy that you forget about yourself. And here's the dangerous part: you don't even realize it until it's too late. Let's dig a little deeper into this. Have you ever been in a situation where you said yes to something you really didn't want to do just because you didn't want to disappoint someone? Maybe you agreed to cover a coworker's shift even though you were exhausted. Or you said yes to helping a friend move even though you had plans of your own. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, the kind thing to do. But later, you found yourself resentful, drained, and maybe even a little bit angry. That's the dark side of kindness, the philosophy behind it. Now, let's get philosophical. Stoicism, one of the most practical and powerful philosophies out there, has a lot to say about this. Stoics believed in living a balanced life, one where you put your energy into things that matter and, most importantly, where you draw the line. You see, toxic kindness is like a thief in the night. It sneaks in under the guise of being virtuous, but in reality, it steals away your self-worth. You become so focused on others that you start to neglect your own needs. The Stoics would call this losing sight of your inner logos, your reason, your purpose. And without that, you're just a shell of who you could be. Stoicism teaches us to be mindful of our own needs, to practice self-care and self-respect. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing that you can't give what you don't have. If you're constantly giving to others without replenishing yourself, you'll eventually run out of steam. The Stoics were all about finding balance, knowing when to give and when to hold back, when to be kind and when to stand firm. But here's where it gets tricky. Our society often rewards excessive kindness. We celebrate those who are always there for others, who never say no, who put everyone else first. But at what cost? The Stoics would argue that true virtue lies in balance, in knowing when to say yes and when to say no, in being kind but also in protecting your own well-being. Real life example. Think about it. Ever heard the saying, "You can't pour from an empty cup"? Well, it's true. Let's say you're a mom, or maybe you've seen this with your own mom, always putting the kids first, sacrificing every little thing, even sleep and sanity, just to make sure the family is okay. But what happens when she finally burns out? The whole family suffers because the one holding it all together has nothing left to give. Or consider this: you're the friend who's always there, always saying yes, even when you really want to say no. You end up at events you don't want to be at, doing things you don't care about, just to keep everyone happy. But here's the harsh reality: no one's asking if you're okay, if you're happy. You've set the precedent that your needs don't matter, so why should they? This brings us to the concept of oikeiosis in Stoic philosophy. Oikeiosis is the idea of becoming aware of your own nature, of understanding who you are and what you need to thrive. When you're constantly putting others first, you're denying yourself the opportunity to truly know yourself. You're sacrificing your own growth, your own happiness for the sake of others. And that's not virtuous, it's destructive. Let's take a moment to think about this on a societal level. How often do we see people, especially women, praised for being selfless, for putting others first? We're told that this is what makes a good person. But is it really? The Stoics would say no. They would argue that true goodness comes from living in accordance with nature, with understanding and respecting your own needs as much as those of others. Psychological insight. Psychologically, this constant need to be kind stems from a place of insecurity. Maybe you feel that if you're not the nice one, people won't like you. But here's the deal: over time, this erodes your self-esteem. You start to believe that your worth is tied to how much you do for others. And when that happens, you're in trouble. The Stoics had a word for this: oikeiosis, which is the process of understanding and embracing your true self. If you're always living for others, you never get the chance to truly know who you are. And that's a tragedy. This brings us to an important psychological insight: the concept of people-pleasing. It's when you prioritize others' needs to the detriment of your own. People-pleasers often fear rejection or disapproval, so they go out of their way to make everyone else happy, even if it means sacrificing their own happiness. But here's the thing: people-pleasing isn't kindness. It's a form of self-betrayal. Let's talk about guilt for a moment. Have you ever felt guilty for saying no? For putting yourself first? That's a common experience, especially for people who have been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to how much they do for others. But here's the truth: you have nothing to feel guilty about. Setting boundaries, saying no, and prioritizing your own well-being isn't selfish, it's essential. The Stoics understood this. They knew that in order to live a virtuous life, you had to take care of yourself first. You had to understand your own needs, your own limits, and respect them. When you do this, you're not just being kind to yourself, you're also setting a healthy example for others. You're showing them that it's okay to put themselves first, to set boundaries, and to say no. The solution: setting boundaries. So what's the solution? It's simple: set boundaries. I know, easier said than done, right? But here's the thing: boundaries are the ultimate form of kindness, both to yourself and to others. They let people know where you stand, what you're willing to do, and more importantly, what you're not willing to do. Setting boundaries is about being clear about your needs and communicating them to others. It's about knowing your limits and respecting them. It's about saying no when you need to without feeling guilty. And most importantly, it's about understanding that you can't be everything to everyone. You have to take care of yourself first. It's okay to say no. In fact, it's necessary. The Stoics taught that to live a virtuous life, you must first know what you stand for, and then defend it fiercely. That means not letting people walk all over you, not saying yes when you really want to say no, and not sacrificing your own peace for someone else's comfort. Let's get into some practical steps you can take to start setting boundaries today. First, start by identifying where you feel most drained in your life. Is it at work, with your friends, with your family? Once you've identified the areas where you're overextending yourself, you can start to set boundaries. Practical tips for setting boundaries. All right, so how do you actually do this in real life? Here are a few tips. Start small. Begin by saying no to small things. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but it gets easier. Trust me. The next time someone asks you to do something that you don't really want to do, practice saying no. It might feel weird at first, but over time, it will become second nature. Prioritize your needs. Make a list of your own needs and priorities. Know what's non-negotiable for you, and don't budge on those things. This will help you stay focused on what's important to you and avoid getting sidetracked by other people's demands. Communicate clearly. When setting a boundary, be clear and firm, but also kind. You don't have to be harsh to be assertive. For example, if a friend asks you to do something that you don't want to do, you can say something like, "I'm really sorry, but I'm not able to do that right now this way." You're being honest about your limits without hurting their feelings. Practice self-compassion. Remember, it's okay to put yourself first. In fact, it's necessary. You're not being selfish, you're being self-aware. Give yourself permission to prioritize your own well-being. It's not just okay, it's essential for a balanced, fulfilling life. Be consistent. Once you've set a boundary, stick to it. Consistency is key when it comes to maintaining healthy boundaries. If you start to waver, others will see that and may try to push your limits. So stay firm and be consistent. Don't apologize for setting boundaries. This is a big one. Often we feel the need to apologize when we set boundaries, as if we're doing something wrong. But the truth is, you have nothing to apologize for. Setting boundaries is a healthy, necessary part of life. So stand firm in your decisions and don't feel guilty for taking care of yourself. Overcoming the fear of disapproval. One of the biggest challenges people face when setting boundaries is the fear of disapproval. We worry that others will be upset, that they'll think less of us, or that we'll lose their approval. But here's the truth. You can't control how others will react. What you can control is how you respond to their reactions. The Stoics teach us that we are only responsible for our own actions, not the reactions of others. This means that if someone gets upset because you set a boundary, that's on them, not you. Your job is to take care of yourself and do what's best for you. It's also important to remember that setting boundaries doesn't mean you're being unkind. In fact, it's the opposite. By setting boundaries, you're being kind to yourself, and you're also being honest with others. You're letting them know what you need, what you're comfortable with, and where your limits are. The power of saying no. Saying no can be incredibly powerful. It's a way of taking back control of your life, of asserting your needs and desires, and of protecting your own well-being. But it's not always easy. It takes practice and courage to say no, especially if you're used to always saying yes. But here's the thing, the more you practice saying no, the easier it will become. And the more you say no to things that don't serve you, the more time and energy you'll have for the things that do. So don't be afraid to say no. It's one of the most powerful tools you have for protecting your own well-being. Balancing kindness and self-respect. So, how do you balance being kind with respecting your own needs? The key is to find the middle ground. You don't have to be a doormat, and you don't have to be selfish. You can be kind and still set boundaries. You can be generous and still prioritize your own well-being. The Stoics teach us that virtue lies in balance. It's about finding the right amount of kindness, the right amount of generosity, and the right amount of self-respect. It's about knowing when to give and when to hold back, when to say yes and when to say no. And most importantly, it's about being true to yourself. It's about understanding who you are, what you need, and what you value. When you know these things, you can live a life that's both kind and fulfilling. So there you have it, the dark side of kindness. It's a trap that's easy to fall into, but once you're aware of it, you can take steps to avoid it. Remember, true kindness starts with being kind to yourself first. Without that, everything else crumbles. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself being too kind? How did it affect your life? Drop a comment below. Hit that like button if this resonated with you. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into life's biggest questions. Let's keep this conversation going because I'm here to help you navigate these tricky waters. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one. Stay strong, stay wise, and remember kindness has its limits, and that's okay.